I did secretly. I didn't want to tell anybody because I was ashamed. I thought maybe that was something that lightweights did. And actually, I got into the business because I thought it would keep me from working.
Gene Hackman spent a lifetime playing men who refused to back down. Whether he was chasing criminals through the streets of New York, confronting outlaws in the Wild West, or portraying complex characters haunted by their own past, audiences came to see him as one of Hollywood's toughest and most respected actors. On screen, he always appeared unbreakable. Even after retiring from acting, he remained one of those rare legends whose name alone commanded respect. So when news broke that Gene Hackman had been found dead inside his New Mexico home, the story immediately captured worldwide attention. But what transformed a sad announcement into an international mystery wasn't simply the death of a beloved actor. It was the disturbing circumstances surrounding what investigators discovered. Hackman wasn't alone. His wife, Betsy Arakawa, had also been found dead inside the house. One of their dogs was dead as well. They were discovered in different parts of the home, and early investigators admitted they couldn't immediately explain what had happened. Almost overnight, rumors spread across television, social media, and countless news websites. Every new theory seemed stranger than the last. Some suggested carbon monoxide poisoning. Others believed foul play couldn't be ruled out. A few even speculated there was some hidden medical mystery no one had uncovered. For weeks, the public waited while investigators quietly assembled the facts behind closed doors. Every official update seemed to answer one question while creating several more. Then something unexpected happened. The medical examiner completed a detailed investigation, and the findings painted a picture completely different from the dramatic stories circulating online. There was no Hollywood conspiracy, no secret cover-up. Instead, what emerged was something far more heartbreaking. A deeply human story about aging, illness, devotion, and the quiet struggles that can remain invisible, even in the life of one of cinema's greatest icons. To understand why these findings shocked so many people, you first have to understand the man himself. Gene Hackman wasn't born into fame. Long before Academy Awards and blockbuster films, he experienced hardship that would shape nearly every part of his personality. His childhood was marked by instability and disappointment. His father eventually left the family, disappearing from his son's life with little more than a casual wave from the driver's seat of a departing car. That simple moment stayed with Hackman forever. Years later, he admitted it became one of the defining memories of his childhood, not because of shouting or violence, but because of how ordinary the goodbye seemed. It taught him something he never forgot. People could leave without warning. As a teenager, anger became one of the few emotions he fully understood. He frequently challenged authority, got into trouble, and struggled to find direction. Eventually, looking for purpose and escape, he joined the United States Marine Corps while still in his teens. Military life didn't magically solve his problems. If anything, it highlighted them. Hackman developed a reputation for questioning orders and refusing to blindly follow authority. His stubborn personality repeatedly put him at odds with his superiors. Then came a motorcycle accident that effectively ended his military career. Suddenly, he found himself starting over once again. With no clear future ahead, he remembered something that had always brought him comfort as a child. Movies. His mother had often taken him to theaters, and those afternoons remained among his happiest memories. Inspired by those experiences, Hackman decided to pursue acting, despite having little reason to believe success was possible. It wasn't an easy beginning. Before becoming famous, he worked countless ordinary jobs simply to survive. He polished office furniture. He worked as a doorman. He performed whatever work paid enough to keep chasing his dream. One particularly humiliating encounter became a turning point. While standing outside the hotel where he worked as a doorman, one of his former Marine instructors walked past. The instructor recognized Hackman instantly. Instead of encouragement, he reportedly muttered an insult that implied Hackman had failed at life. For many people, such a moment might have destroyed their confidence. For Gene Hackman, it became fuel. Every insult, every rejection, every prediction that he would never succeed. He quietly stored them away, transforming criticism into motivation. That mindset followed him when he enrolled at the Pasadena Playhouse. Unfortunately, acting school offered little encouragement either. Unlike most students, Hackman was older. He didn't possess the polished appearance many associated with future movie stars. Some instructors openly questioned whether he belonged there at all. According to stories from the time, he graduated with one of the lowest evaluations ever given by the school. Imagine hearing from professional acting teachers that you probably weren't talented enough to succeed. Many people would have walked away forever. Hackman didn't. Instead, he found an unlikely friend who understood exactly what rejection felt like. His name was Dustin Hoffman. Neither man resembled Hollywood's traditional leading actors. Neither fit industry expectations. Ironically, classmates reportedly voted both of them least likely to succeed. History, of course, had other plans. The following years remained difficult. Small television appearances, minor movie roles, auditions that led nowhere, financial uncertainty. But gradually, opportunity finally arrived. In 1967, Hackman landed the role of Buck Barrow in Bonnie and Clyde. The performance stunned critics. His raw intensity immediately stood out. For the first time, Hollywood realized they had discovered someone different. Not traditionally handsome, not polished, but undeniably authentic. That role earned him his first Academy Award nomination and launched one of the greatest acting careers in American cinema. Soon came another breakthrough, The French Connection. The film would become legendary. Hackman's portrayal of Detective Popeye Doyle earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor and established him as one of the finest performers of his generation. Ironically, success didn't erase his insecurities. Years later, Hackman admitted he hadn't even been the filmmaker's first choice. Several other major actors had reportedly been offered the role before him. Rather than celebrating his opportunity, part of him remained haunted by the feeling that he had only been selected after everyone else declined. Those doubts never completely disappeared. Instead, they became part of his creative process. Every character carried traces of his own fears, frustrations, and determination. Perhaps that's why audiences believed every performance. He wasn't pretending to struggle. He understood struggle. Throughout the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, Gene Hackman built one remarkable performance after another. The Conversation, Superman, Mississippi Burning, Unforgiven, Crimson Tide, The Royal Tenenbaums. Each role demonstrated remarkable versatility. He could play heroes, villains, police officers, military leaders, lonely men carrying invisible emotional scars. Behind the camera, however, Hackman developed another reputation. Many directors admired his extraordinary commitment. Others found him intimidating. He demanded excellence from himself and from everyone around him. Co-stars frequently described him as intensely private. He rarely discussed personal matters. He kept emotional distance. Very few people truly knew him. Perhaps that explains why his retirement surprised so many fans. In 2004, after decades of unforgettable performances, Gene Hackman quietly stepped away from Hollywood. No farewell tour, no dramati gudvie, no carefully orchestrated final performance. He simply left. While many actors spend retirement seeking attention, Hackman embraced almost complete privacy. He settled in a life with his wife, Betsy Arakawa, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The couple rarely appeared publicly. Photographs became increasingly uncommon. Years passed with almost no interviews. To the outside world, it seemed like the legendary actor had simply disappeared into a peaceful retirement. But behind closed doors, something very different was unfolding. Unknown to nearly everyone outside his closest circle, Gene Hackman's health had begun changing in ways the public never realized. Those hidden struggles would eventually become central to one of Hollywood's most misunderstood tragedies. When investigators finally entered the quiet New Mexico home in February 2025, they weren't just beginning an investigation. They were about to uncover the final chapter of a story that had remained hidden for years. For nearly 3 weeks after Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were discovered, the silence surrounding their deaths allowed speculation to grow faster than facts. Every day, seemed to bring another theory. Television commentators debated possible causes. Internet forums filled with elaborate explanations. Some insisted there had to be a criminal investigation hidden from the public. Others became convinced a dangerous gas leak had claimed both lives. The unusual circumstances made those theories easy to believe. A 95-year-old Hollywood legend, his 65-year-old wife, both found deceased inside the same home. Separate rooms. No obvious signs of violence. No immediate explanation. It sounded like the beginning of a mystery movie Gene Hackman himself might have starred in. But real life rarely follows Hollywood scripts. As investigators continued gathering evidence, every physical clue, every medical record, every laboratory test, and every digital record gradually pointed toward a much quieter explanation. The official findings eventually revealed that Gene Hackman had been living with severe medical conditions that had never been publicly disclosed. His heart had endured years of damage. Doctors documented a long history of congestive heart failure. His kidneys showed extensive damage caused by chronic high blood pressure. Years earlier, he had received a ventricular pacemaker to help regulate his heartbeat. Even more significant was what specialists discovered during examination of his brain. The findings were consistent with advanced Alzheimer's disease. To many people, that single revelation was the biggest surprise of the entire investigation. For decades, Hackman had carefully guarded every aspect of his personal life. Friends often described him as intensely private. Former co-stars said he rarely discussed anything beyond work. Now, after his death, medical records revealed that one of Hollywood's greatest actors had quietly been fighting one of the most devastating neurological diseases imaginable. The investigation documented additional evidence showing just how much stress his body had endured over the years. Extensive coronary artery disease, multiple previous cardiac procedures, an aortic valve replacement, coronary stents, bypass surgery, evidence of previous heart attacks that had permanently damaged sections of his heart muscle. Taken individually, each condition represented a serious health challenge. Together, they painted the picture of an elderly man whose body had been surviving through extraordinary medical care for years. Just as important as what investigators discovered was what they ruled out. Carbon monoxide testing came back within normal limits. That immediately eliminated one of the earliest theories. Testing also failed to support concerns about several other suspected causes. Piece by piece, the dramatic explanations disappeared. Then toxicology revealed something many people misunderstood. Trace levels of acetone were found in Hackman's body. The word itself sounded alarming. Online discussions quickly transformed it into another supposed mystery. In reality, investigators explained that acetone is naturally produced by the human body under certain conditions. One common cause is prolonged fasting. Another involves uncontrolled diabetes. Rather than suggesting poisoning, the evidence indicated something far more tragic. The elevated acetone levels were consistent with someone who had gone without adequate food for an extended period before death. When investigators combined that finding with the rest of the evidence, an increasingly heartbreaking timeline began to emerge. Attention then shifted toward Betsy, Arakawa. Investigators examined her computer, email history, and recent online searches. Those digital records became one of the most revealing parts of the investigation. During her final days, Betsy had repeatedly searched for information about flu-like symptoms. She researched COVID. She searched for information about illnesses causing fever and breathing problems. At one point, she also searched repeatedly for information about carbon monoxide, apparently trying to determine whether something inside the house might explain what she was experiencing. She even contacted medical professionals while continuing to look for answers. Those searches told investigators something profoundly important. She wasn't hiding anything. She was trying to understand what was happening to herself or to her husband. Unfortunately, the illness affecting her wasn't something most people would immediately recognize. Medical investigators eventually determined that Betsy Arakawa had died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. The disease is extremely rare, but potentially deadly. Its earliest symptoms often resemble common viral illnesses: fever, fatigue, muscle aches, sometimes nausea, sometimes coughing. To an ordinary person, it can easily feel like influenza or another seasonal illness. But as the infection progresses, it can rapidly attack the lungs and cardiovascular system. By the time breathing becomes severely affected, emergency treatment may already be urgently needed. Investigators concluded that Betsy likely became seriously ill while still attempting to care for Gene Hackman. That detail transformed public understanding of the entire tragedy. Because Gene Hackman wasn't simply an elderly man living alone. According to the medical findings, he was an elderly man with advanced Alzheimer's disease whose primary caregiver had suddenly become critically ill herself. Once she was no longer able to care for him, Hackman's already fragile condition became even more dangerous. Investigators found no evidence of violence, no forced entry, no straggled, no injuries suggesting an assault. Instead, every confirmed finding pointed toward two separate medical tragedies unfolding inside the same home. One spouse became fatally ill. The other, already living with severe heart disease and advanced Alzheimer's disease, remained inside the house without the daily support he depended upon. The official findings describe a tragedy rather than a crime. As those conclusions became public, another voice entered the conversation. An embalmer who participated in preparing Gene Hackman after his death publicly addressed many of the rumors circulating online. Rather than supporting sensational theories, the embalmer emphasized that the physical condition of the body was consistent with the official timeline established by investigators. There were no shocking hidden injuries or evidence contradicting the medical examiner's conclusions. Instead, the embalmer's observations aligned with what officials had already confirmed through the autopsy and investigation. This was a case marked by natural disease processes and the passage of time before the couple was discovered, not by evidence of foul play. For many people hoping for a dramatic revelation, those confirmations almost felt anticlimactic. But the truth carried far greater emotional weight. Gene Hackman had spent his entire life proving people wrong. Critics doubted him. Teachers dismissed him. Directors overlooked him. Again and again, he turned rejection into determination. Even during retirement, he maintained the same intensely private personality that had defined him for decades. Few people knew how fragile his health had become. Few understood how much Betsy Arakawa had been doing behind the scenes. In the end, there wasn't one shocking secret hidden inside the investigation. There were simply facts. An elderly man living with advanced Alzheimer's disease. A wife desperately trying to understand a mysterious illness affecting their household. Serious heart disease that had accumulated over decades. A rare infection. And a home that grew silent before anyone realized something was terribly wrong. The official investigation ultimately answered the questions that had dominated headlines for weeks. There was no criminal conspiracy, no elaborate cover-up, no hidden scandal waiting to be exposed. Only the quiet reality of age, illness, devotion, and loss. Perhaps that's why Gene Hackman's final story resonates so deeply. For more than 60 years, audiences watched him portray fearless men capable of overcoming impossible odds. Yet his final chapter reminds us that even the strongest legends remain human. Behind every unforgettable performance stood a man who carried invisible burdens, protected his privacy until the very end, and spent his final years far from Hollywood's spotlight. When the investigation finally closed, it didn't reveal a sensational mystery. It revealed something far more powerful. Sometimes the truth isn't dramatic. Sometimes the truth is simply heartbreaking. And in Gene Hackman's case, that quiet truth became the final performance no one ever expected.